Only mode.
Good afternoon. I'm Ginny Van Dusen, Director of Alumni Career Development at Holy Cross, and I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar. This is the next installment in our series of web-based presentations covering a broad range of career development topics. Today, I'm excited to welcome Linda Waters, founder of Back to Business, which specializes in confident career transitions. In her presentation today, Linda will share some important tips on how to re-enter the workforce successfully. We'll be together for a little under an hour. Linda will speak and will then take questions from you for as long as time allows. I encourage you to submit questions throughout this presentation by checking out the question function located on your webinar toolbar to the right. Thank you for joining us. And now it's my pleasure to turn things over to Linda.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for having me, Ginny. I'm here. I'm going to talk really quickly about who I am and why I do what I do. And then I want to get into the elements of getting back into the workforce. I could do a webinar or a series on each and every topic, but we're going to try and leave you with some actionable and hopefully useful advice for getting back into the workforce. So I'm a corporate refugee. I was in corporate for 20 years, and I hit my 40s, and I was tired of politics, and I burned out, so I quit my big job, and I started back to business to help moms get back into the workforce, because after I left my corporate job, I was a stay-at-home mom for 6 months. And boy, did I gain a good understanding of what it's like to be a stay-at-home mom. And it's interesting because my across-the-street neighbor has been a stay-at-home mom all these years, and I always worked. And I remember one morning getting into a limo on my way to a business trip on a Sunday, and she was standing in her doorway waving goodbye to me in her pajamas with a nice cup of tea, and she looked at me and thought, I want her life, and I looked at her and thought, I want her life. So I want to talk about the challenges of getting back into the workforce and give you some useful advice on how to tackle it. And before I do, I want to just say that getting back into the workforce is a very personal process, and it's important to be patient with yourself and understand that everyone has their own journey. So I'm going to start with my favorite quote. Let me back up for a second. So the elements of the job search, when you are looking for a change in career, you can feel like you're sitting at the bottom of a very tall mountain with clouds at the top, so it's really difficult to even know where you're going, and it's very daunting and intimidating. So we're going to break this down into all of the elements and address each one individually. Here's the quote that I was referring to: never compare your inside to someone else's outside. And I think throughout the whole process it's important to remember this, because everyone has a story and everyone has things going on, and it's important to realize that you're not the only one who might be struggling. The other thing I want to start with is how to address the quote-unquote gap, which is my least favorite word because it's not like we've been sitting around doing nothing. And I wanted to put a template in here to begin, which makes it very easy, so that when you're talking with someone about re-entering, you address the elephant in the room and you're done with it. So my template goes through a very easy sentence, which is, I was fortunate to stay home with my family for the last 17 years. As you can see from my resume, I've been keeping my skills sharp via the volunteer work that I've been doing, and this is where you can call out some of the transferable skills. You can note that you'd be a great fit for the position because of these transferable skills, and then follow with a question to start off your conversation, and that way it's been addressed and everybody knows. When I first started back to business, I did a lot of research with hiring managers and HR people, and I was asking them, what is it about us? What works? What doesn't work? What do you think about the gap? And all of them said the same things to me. They were very clear that they didn't care that we had stayed home for a period of time to raise our family or take care of an elder. They just wanted to know if we could do the job. So the gap seems bigger to us than it does to the people who are actually doing the hiring. Another thing I want to say about the job market is you couldn't have a better market than right now. It's best it's been in a decade, and people are hiring and they're looking for us. They're looking for women who are mature, we've had our babies, we're reliable, and I've even spoken in front of hundreds of HR people who were brainstorming, trying to figure out how to find us. So that ought to make you feel good. So we're going to start with the elements of the process of changing your career. And we're going to start with the first, most critical and most difficult one, which is having clarity of your direction, because a lot of us can't even address who am I now in my life. And so you have to take stock of your natural strengths and talents. We all tend to gravitate to what we're naturally good at. And when you hit a position, a job that's in your sweet spot, you're going to be successful. And then it's really important to identify and be able to call out your transferable skills. So your interviewer can't connect the dots. You need to connect the dots for them. So taking stock of your transferable skills is really important. And I'll give you an example. If you were the president of the PTO and you think that doesn't count for your resume, that's not true at all. You've got management skills, you're managing a bunch of volunteer moms, you can manage anybody. And if you were a treasurer, that's finance. If you were fundraising, whether it's selling Girl Scout cookies or something else, it doesn't matter. That's sales and marketing. So that's what I'm referring to in terms of transferable skills. And then it's also really important to understand your work style and how you like to operate so that you can ask the right interview questions and identify whether or not the culture you're going into is a good fit for you. So you can have two jobs that read the same on paper, but you can have one group of people that fly by the seat of their pants and do everything last minute, and it would drive you crazy, or you could have another group of people that are highly methodical, and that would drive you crazy. It's important to identify the culture fit for you, because it's not just about getting a job. It's about finding a career where you're going to be in an environment where you're going to be welcome and successful and respected. The next topic is resume. So it's really hard to write a directed resume if you don't first understand your direction. So the resume would be the next step. People can't stand writing their own resume. It's really hard to do. It's difficult to write about yourself. So I'm just going to give you a few tips. There are rules of the road of a resume, and they're even more important now than they ever have been, because half of the resumes get culled out by applicant tracking systems, so half of resumes don't even get to be seen by a person. So in order to make sure that you don't get stuck in that trap, your resume, you want to make sure that you use Arial or Times New Roman fonts. They're the ones that get the least. Your font size should be 11 points, maybe 12, except for your name, which could be 14. And then the number of pages, so everybody wants to know how many pages. If you're graduating from college, 1 page, and your education goes on the top. If you are re-entering the workforce or in any other position, you can have 2 pages, but the education falls to the bottom after your first job, and 3 pages will get tossed. So no more than 2 pages, but 2 pages is fine. In addition to that, it's expected that our resumes are tailored to the job that we're talking about. So you would use the summary section at the top and call in keywords from the job description, as long as they're true and relevant. And then I always recommend saving it to PDF whenever you can, because PDF format protects your document, because it's possible somebody else would open up your document on a different computer in a different program and it would be all scrambled, and that doesn't serve you at all. The next section, and again I want to say I could do a whole series of webinars to these topics. I'm just trying to hit them all with some actionable advice so then we can get to the questions. Cover letters. So are cover letters important? Yes. There are many hiring people and applicant tracking systems that won't look at your resume unless you take the time and make the effort to write a cover letter. And I think cover letters are awesome because they get to say what you can't in your resume. You can be more personable. You can say, I'm returning to the workforce, I'm interested in this industry, and I, have researched your company and I think it'd be a great fit. You can say more about what you have been doing and how it's relevant to the job than you actually can on the resume. It's great to show that you've researched the company. It shows effort and commitment, and a cover letter can get you that interview. And I want to remind you that the role of the resume and the cover letter are to get you in the door. They're marketing documents. They're not the story of your life. And also, remember, they get you in the door, and it's the interview that gets you the job. Of their place in the job search, but they're not the be-all and end-all. Next, I want to talk about social media. Most of us have become more computer savvy than we were a decade ago because of social media, because we're all on Facebook and Pinterest and stalking our kids. But a lot of us do make the same mistake, which is we set up social media when we're not looking for a job, and we forget to clam things up when it's time to look for a job. And we also need to remember that whatever you put online can be found even after you take it off with your computer. So be careful, clean it up, go on to each social media venue and make sure to check your privacy settings. Make sure you don't have people posting on your timeline with inappropriate things. Make sure nobody else can see your timeline unless they're connected directly to you. Google yourself so that you can see what comes up. Now, I happen to know that there's a Linda Waters with a little cat suit and cat ears drinking a martini, and that's not me. But now I know who's out there, because if somebody Googled Linda Waters, she's who they would find. So make sure you understand what somebody who's going to be looking into you is going to see. One more thing, and this actually goes back to the resume, but it has to do with checking up on yourself, is call the phone number that you're going to put on the top of your resume. So when I work with my clients, I ambush them and I call the number on the resume. And the best one I've heard yet is, "Hi, it's Marie. Can't find my phone right now. It's probably in the back seat with the kids and the French fries. I'll call you when I find it. Bye." So make sure that the voicemail that you put onto that resume is the one that you want a hiring manager to hear. Okay, so further to social media, let's just talk very quickly. LinkedIn is used not for "I just had a donut." It's used for business only, and it's a professional networking environment, which is like your little black book of all your networking contacts, but also you get to connect with people not just in your immediate acquaintance group, but also their acquaintances and then theirs again. So there are 3 levels with LinkedIn, and it's a wonderful, powerful networking tool that can help you in many ways. Facebook is not for business. Facebook is where you need to shut down all of your security settings because you want the hiring manager to find your profile on LinkedIn. So if your profile is complete, it'll raise to the top of the search when somebody puts in your name. Twitter can be a networking tool, but also Twitter is used for more casual things. You only get 140 characters, and it's not your resume online like LinkedIn is. And the reason that we look at social media post the resume is because you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You just can copy and paste once your resume is completed into your LinkedIn profile. So it's really easy to set up your professional profile. When you go through the sequence of looking for a job, you might find a position online, or you may be told about a position by a networking contact, and the next step once you've submitted your resume and your cover letter is to go to LinkedIn, search the company, and see who you know there. And if you have a connection there, take them out for a cup of coffee and learn more. It's a great way to get those contacts in kind of like a side door. And now we'll talk about your elevator pitch, which scares everyone. The elevator pitch is called the elevator pitch because it's like the length of time you have to do it is taking an elevator from the 8th floor down to a lobby in a building. So it's your 30 to 60 second little answer to the question, so tell me about yourself, which is the dreaded question. And it takes practice, and it's important to put it together correctly so that people can understand what you're looking for. It also is very helpful in an interview situation because the biggest mistake people do is ramble, and this helps you deliver clearly and concisely what you're all about so that you can move on to the good stuff, which is asking questions. So the elevator pitch is your 30 to 60 second commercial. It's not unprofessional. It's not conceited. It's expected, and it's a great way to start a conversation. Okay, so here's a template for you on how to build your elevator pitch. You don't have to say just 4 different ideas to get started with. So you can say, I'm returning to the workforce after 20 years, I had a background in finance, and now if you're transitioning, you can say, and now I'm looking to transfer my skill set to a career in veterinary medicine and or the veterinary industry. So it's a great way to just explain that you're transitioning, or sell what your skills are that you plan to continue with, and you can use a sentence like, I help people get back into the workforce by running them through a clear, specific process that's results-oriented and helps them find success. Okay, networking. Networking is everything. More than 80% of jobs are gotten by networking. And this does not mean with your friends and family. This means with people that you don't know. And I think it's the single most scary, difficult, but important components of finding a job. So a small percentage of people happen onto the internet, submit their resume gets to the other side of the tracking engine, and bam, they have an interview, then they get the job. It's not the way it always happens. Networking is a great way to get into the back into the workforce. People know you, people refer you. And also, even if you're nervous, it's really important, and I know we all know these things, but I'm just going to reiterate them. Your first impression matters, and even though we are women with texture in our lives and valuable life experience, we don't like to think that we're judged within seconds of walking in a room, but it is true that you are. And so if you're going to play the game, do it well. Feel confident in knowing that you're bulletproof in every way. Have your firm handshake down. Practice your handshake with someone. Make sure you're making eye contact and listening intently to your interviewer. Smile. Don't forget to smile. We forget to smile when we're nervous. And most women I know, when they really smile, genuinely light up a room with it. And I suggest also going shopping and getting yourself a new suit and new shoes so you feel good. When you go into a room, so everybody isn't an extrovert like me, and so everybody does not enjoy going to a networking event. So there are ways to not be so nervous. One is, think about it this way. We all love to help people. Think about you're going to this event to find 3 people that you could help, because don't forget you've got your own network too. Find 3 people that you can help today, and it'll have you asking all the right questions and saying the right things. You just go in and ask questions. It takes the spotlight off of you. Have your elevator pitch ready, and then go learn about people. People like to talk about themselves, and it's an easy way to integrate into networking. And somebody asked me, how do I insert myself into a group of people when everybody in the room seems to be taken, or they're already in groups? One might be to go early, and get comfortable with the environment. Another one would be to just stand in and listen. People will naturally make room for you, and just listen and see what the conversation is doing before you say anything. Next, the interview. Okay, so interviews are like anything else that you don't know how to do. High-level executives don't know how to interview because they haven't interviewed in years. And so don't feel like you should just be able to walk into an interview and do it. It takes practice, and it takes preparation. So the first part I would recommend is to do your homework, get onto the internet, get onto LinkedIn, research the company. Most companies have a profile there, including people you're connected to that work there. You can also research your interviewer on LinkedIn and see if maybe they went to the same college you did, or maybe they have a hobby that you share, something to talk about. Go onto the corporate website, find out about the mission of the company, find things that they express in terms of their values that might work for you or that you admire so that you can talk about them. Prepare your questions. The worst thing we can do in an interview is when the interviewer says, do you have any questions, and we say no. You have to have questions. So my favorite interview question that I'll share with you is, tell me about your best people and what makes them really good at what they do. So my old boss would have said, well, my people are great because I can send an email out at 2 in the morning and they all answer, which means run. But it's very important to, by asking a question, you get a character assessment of what they're looking for in terms of personal characteristics of their new hires. Commitment, responsibility, they're reliable, whatever it is, will give you a window into what it's really like to work there. And then I would recommend that you practice. So there is a great set of videos and podcasts that are on my website. If you go to backtobusiness.us, you will find in the blog section a free video on how to interview, and then a whole series, and we've got a discount on our website as well. So you have access to those for a full year, and they step through every aspect of the interview process, the behavioral interview, how to handle the most difficult questions, and people call me and say they know they sealed the deal because of this program. It's called Interview Mastery. So here are some tips on how to not be so nervous when you're interviewing. It's really important to remember that the interview is it's a business conversation. It's two adults getting together to talk and see if they have a fit. And you can almost think of it like speed dating, like, hi, do we have a fit? No. Okay, no problem. Bye. Hi, do we have a fit? Maybe. Great, let's take it further. So it's not personal. It's not about you. It's not personal. Remember that the person on the other side of that desk has a problem, and their problem is that they need to bring somebody in to do a job, and they need to hire somebody who's going to stay with the company and be a good fit, and they have a short period of time to make that assessment. Also remember, sometimes people get or do not get jobs because they're not the right culture fit. For instance, I had a client who on paper was perfect for a position and she wasn't hired, and I happen to know the HR manager, and I know that the reason is she's super nice and the sales staff at that particular company are a bunch of animals and they would have eaten her for lunch. So the woman actually did her a favor by not hiring her into what would have been a really awful environment for her personality style. So I would say trust your interviewer, but be yourself and be prepared so you can concisely answer their questions, not ramble, so they can get to the bottom of whether or not you're a good fit for the position. And then I want to say one more thing. So this is a picture of a crumpled world. Everybody has a crumpled world. Sometimes it's more crumpled than others. And your interviewer is a human being who might have a crumpled world, and they might have just lost their dog. They could be putting their mother in a home. It's impossible to know. So when you go into an interview, try and come from a mindset of kindness and that you're there to help them determine whether or not it's a good fit. And even if it's not a waste of time because you got more practice in, and you never know who they know that might be looking for you. Follow-up. So everybody wants to know the answer to this question. They want to know, should we send an email follow-up or a thank you note? And my answer is yes, both. So you send an email because it's quick, thanking them. You can make a note of something that came up in the conversation that stuck with you. You can remind them of your qualifications, and then you get another way to get in front of them with a handwritten thank you note. People forget how impactful a handwritten thank you note is. And so make sure to do both. And in them you can gently call out again your fit. and your transferable skills and how they fit in. Same with network connections. When you use someone's time to meet with you and brainstorm and talk, make sure that you thank them and send a follow-up. And then periodically check in. And I think that's it. Hopefully that's helpful. We have plenty of time for questions. Right?
We do. All right, so we'll get started. First question, do you need to change your resume for each job application or just your cover letter?
If you feel that the way you've written your resume suits both jobs well and calls out some of the same key words, there's no need to change it. But if you feel that you can tweak it just a little bit, I recommend tweaking the resume in the summary section at the very top. And remember, resumes only get 30 to 45 seconds of an eyeball, so you want to use your real estate carefully and make sure that you have important words where your eye will go. I like to see summary sections that then have a few bullets that outline what people get when they buy you.
Here's a question. What's the best way to present the year stayed at home with children on my resume? Do I include all of the volunteering done during that time?
Yes, absolutely. It's important. It's your transferable skills. So you can have your professional chronology, but then you can have volunteer and community service, and make sure that when you talk about what you did in a volunteer capacity, that you highlight the transferable skills, and then also in the resume and the cover letter call those out. Here are the reasons. You're looking for this, I offer this. You're looking for, another thing, and I have experience in that.
Here's one. In your experience, should women who have left the workforce with an advanced degree expect that they will not be qualified for an advanced position? For example, should a woman who has been a practicing attorney expect to rejoin the workforce as a paralegal? So I guess that's a question about, should you manage your expectations in terms of getting back into an industry?
Well, I have heard this so many times. It's a great question. I have clients who have MBAs and advanced degrees, and they say, well, I guess I can be an admin. Well, first of all, admins have a very specific skill set, and I think that a lot of us leave money on the table by assuming that we have to start all over again. I mean, having kids didn't make us stupid. It made us smarter and more desirable in many employers' eyes. So I would have those conversations with an employer. And if you've got a law degree or you're an advanced degree, my question would be, have you kept your certification alive? One piece of advice to women who are about to leave the workforce is, if you have an RN or a law degree, do whatever you need to do over the years to keep it alive. Hope that's helpful.
All right, here's one. Do you have any advice about changing industry, so transitioning from one industry to another?
Yes, I do. It's not as hard as you may think. People change careers on average 6 times in a lifetime, which sounds unbelievable, but it's a statistic that exists. It's not unheard of, especially since we just went through like the worst recession ever and people needed to repurpose their careers. And don't forget too, with the speed that technology is advancing, some fields, for instance publishing, aren't as busy as they used to be, and new fields of technology are. So people are faced with transitioning industry often, and it's easy as long as you keep in mind your transferable skills. That's the most important thing, because again, the hiring manager wants to know, can you do the job?
So following up on that, any thoughts on how you'd go about, during that transition from one industry to another, any thoughts on how you'd go about rebranding yourself?
Branding yourself. I think that it's important to call out in your summary at the top of your resume and also in your cover letter that you have these transferable skills and you want to transition into this new industry. And you can even use this in your elevator pitch, saying that you know, I have a background in law and I would like to, you know, transition into the healthcare industry, and here are my thoughts on it. What are your thoughts? See if they have any advice to give. It's not unheard of. It happens all the time. And especially with moms returning, we don't underestimate yourself.
All right, back to resumes. How and when does one follow up after submitting a resume to see if there's interest? Is there sort of a best practices?
Well, one of the most frustrating things for job hunters is I put in my resume and my cover letter, I submitted them online, I haven't heard from anybody, nobody's getting back to me. Happens all the time. And you'll find that the people that get back to you are the ones that know how you feel because they've been there before. But it's really important to find out if the hiring manager got your resume. So that's why I recommend you submit the stuff that you're supposed to submit, and then you go onto LinkedIn and see who you can find who knows someone at that company so that you can send them a resume and ask them if they'd walk it into HR. You can also follow up with a phone call just to ensure that your resume got to the right person. I can't hear you on that.
Back to the transferring industries question. We've got a couple of them on here. Two questions. One, should you explain why you are transferring from one career to another? And how do we market ourselves to another industry after having spent decades in another industry with the same company? Is that also about transferable skills, or are there some other elements you can highlight?
If you're staying within the same company, she's staying in the same company. Well, I think that's very interesting. They already know her, and they know that she's awesome. Is that she's not staying the same? Okay, so explaining why you want to transfer, sure, you can explain what your new interest is. I mean, we evolve and change just like anything else in the world, and for you to only be interested in one thing for your whole entire career just doesn't exist anymore. And so I think it's perfectly understandable that your interests have changed, or you can say something, for instance, you know, I've become gradually more and more interested in this field, and I think I could really bring value to it because of my experience in what you did before. People are curious. People like to know who you are and why you're doing things, and they like stories. So if you have a story that you can share with somebody in a conversation saying, you know, I'm so drawn to this field, and I want to move over to it, and I want to make a career of it, and this is what I have to offer.
Here's a question asking about, in your experience, what is the average amount of time it takes to rejoin the workforce?
It's funny because people, when they speak to me about my back to business process, that's the most common question. How long does this take? And the answer is it's your process, and so it depends on you. Some people, my process includes 3 sessions, and it's a very specific sequence of events, but at the same time it's tailored for each individual's journey because everyone's so different. It can take, you know, a month. It can take a year. It depends on how well equipped you are and how quickly you want to move through it. And there are a lot of other considerations too that we didn't even get to touch on, which is flexibility. What do you need for flexibility? It's really important to think that through. What's your definition of flexibility? How much money you need to make? All of these important considerations that need to kind of be tackled before you're ready to re-enter the workforce.
We have a couple of questions in here that are related, primarily about age. Any thoughts on re-entering the workforce at an older age? What are some of the biggest obstacles, and how do you recommend navigating them? Also, especially if you sense that maybe your age plays a factor in terms of interviews or getting a position.
That's another really good question. So just about every time I speak about reinventing your career, the question is always, is there age discrimination? And the answer is, yeah, there's everything discrimination everywhere you go. Even if we don't like it, it is what it is. And so if you are 50 something and you want to re-enter whatever age you are that's not right out of college, there may be discrimination. There's discrimination against young people just as much as there is against old people. So that's why the key is finding the right fit for you. If you're a mom and you don't want to work with a bunch of 20-somethings, young hungries, because they're not going to get you. So this is about you finding your fit just as much as them. And we've seen plenty of age discrimination. If they don't want you, why would you want to work there, really? So it's really good if you can vet that out beforehand. And unfortunately, it makes a difference. Your job is to get in there and demonstrate your value and have them have total clarity on what they get when they buy you. And if it's not a fit, then, thank you very much, that's great, and move on to the next one.
Here's a question asking about flexibility. You mentioned flexibility. How do you approach an employer about needing flexibility? Should we not even bother applying for jobs advertised as full-time?
Excellent questions. These are really good questions. Thank you. So flexibility is, so there are companies that use MomCore. If you've heard of MomCore, you can look them up. Because they see the value in the more mature moms and they want them. And they go to MomCore looking for, good quality candidates. As far as flexibility, I think it's really important to be open and upfront right out of the gate. And otherwise, you have to work full-time for a while until you earn your flexibility. Also, with flexibility, which is one of my favorite topics, remember that the answer to the question depends on the type of job. So if you want to go in retail or you want to be a bank teller, if you want to be a manager, any job that requires you to be there on site, face-to-face, is going to have less flexibility than a job that you can do remotely. So for instance, you get trained, you have to be prepared to do some investment and commitment out of the gate, but if you're in sales, you can pretty much work your schedule as long as you're making the numbers. So my idea of the best way to get flexible work is to get into a performance-based role so that you can perform, because I find that most women can do in 3 days what other people can do in 5. If you manage your time well and you can get into a performance-based position, then you have play. Then you can work from home when you need to. I want to say one more thing about that too, is how we say things when we're in a professional environment. So listen to these two. Okay, so one, the nurse called, I've got to go, I'm so sorry, I've got to go, I have my phone, I'm sorry. Or you can say, family emergency, I've got to go, I've got my cell phone in case of an emergency, you can call me. Otherwise, I'll see you tomorrow. You see the difference in how we say things? So she just bought herself flexibility and nobody questioned her, where the first one, everybody was rolling their eyes. I know this because it's happened to me.
All right, next question. Do you have any tips or tricks or tools to help with identifying transferable skills?
Tools. Me. When you think about the things that you've been doing, look at the job. You can start with the job description and see what they're looking for. And I want to very quickly, I'm going off a little bit, but caution that some of these job descriptions out there are impossible. They're asking for 5 different types of people. Some of the job descriptions want you to be an accountant and a salesperson and a manager all in one, and they're just not realistic. So don't be put off by the job description. Look at it as a tool, and just because you don't have every single piece, don't let it dissuade you from still applying to that job. As far as identifying transferable skills, find out and come to clarity with what skills they're looking for, and start lining them up. Take out a piece of paper, write down the skills they're looking for, write down the skills that you have, and start making those connections.
All right, back to the gap. How do you redirect an interviewer from your gap back to your skills if they are very focused on your gap?
If they're very focused on the gap, they're not clear that you can do the job. So, and again, the employers, many of them, they're fine with it that you did what you needed to do. And people that take time out of the workforce are everywhere, especially since many people were laid off during the recession. It took them time to repurpose. And now, even more than ever, gaps or flexibility requirements are on a more level playing field because men need flexibility for elder care also. So there are many different reasons for taking time out of the workforce. I think what they want to know is, what have you been doing in the meantime? It's not so much the gap, it's what have you been doing during that gap, and how does that apply to me understanding how you can do this job. And there's a template in the presentation too that I shared. I can go back to if you want me to. Okay.
Here's a question about honing up on some of those skills. If you want to take some basic courses, statistics for example, to help prepare to re-enter in your chosen field, does it matter where you take the class? So is it okay to take it at a local community college, or should you be trying to take it at a more prestigious institution?
Well, if you're taking classes to update skills or explore a new field to see if you're really interested in it, I applaud that. I think it's a great idea. Especially, imagine the field of marketing. Look at how marketing has changed in the last X number of years. It changes every day. I mean, we market on social media, and it's a different story every day. So taking an updated, marketing using social media class or any class is a great idea. Does it matter where you take it? No. Again, on my website, there's a whole series of classes that's provided by Ed2Go. You can just click on classes, and you can find every kind of class, for everything from business writing to technology to creative writing, and they're I think they're like $100, and they have live professors, and you can take them at your own pace. Unless you're in academia. If you're in academia, they're going to want to know more.
All right, here's one. Do you need a professional profile on your resume if re-entering, or can you simply lead your resume with experience? So I think what she's asking about, sounds like, is if you need a summary.
I think a summary is the best real estate on the whole piece of paper. It's really great to be able to say you can say, returning to the workforce with XYZ number of years of experience in A, B, and C. One thing we don't need to put on the resume is your objective. That's kind of thing of the past. And references available upon request is no longer expected either. And also responsible for. The words responsible for I don't recommend using them. It's kind of wasting valuable real estate. I recommend bulleting key accomplishments, inserting as many numbers as you can, as I can go on for forever. If she wants to just come out of the gate with experience, that's fine, but I think a summary is a really great idea.
Great idea, but also I think one of the stumbling blocks for a lot of people, because it's hard to come up with that summary.
Yep.
All right, here's a couple of questions kind of related. You mentioned Mom Corps, which sounds like it's a group that's seeking just moms. Is there a group that's similar that looks for older, experienced workers? And then another question related to that is, are there recommendations for work-at-home positions? Do you have any?
So work-at-home positions can include medical billing, and there are million classes for that. It depends on your personality though. Like some people, half of the people like to work in quiet environments and half of the people like to be around people, and that would just completely stifle them. And that's the reason with the Back to Business program we begin with career and personality assessments so we can figure out answers to these questions of what's going to be the best fit for you. As far as resources, there are many, many resources out there. MomCore is one of them. Most industries have online job postings based on different industries. And are there resources for the more mature workers? Yes, there are. If you're retired, there's SCORE. There are many, many networking groups all over the place that meet regularly for networking and usually include more mature workers. Yes. Google it and you'll find.
Google is a beautiful thing. Here's one that's kind of specific, just asking how long and recent should a writing sample be? So I guess if you're applying for something that's going to be a writing position, any thoughts on that?
Yes, there are many resources online to be able to post writing samples. There are resources for artists and photographers to post their work, and same for writers to post their work. And if you can get published, you know, make sure to include that as well. Writing's a great field. It's a great time for it too because everybody needs to take what they've been doing and put it up onto the internet.
All right, back to a clarity of direction question. Do you have any specific advice on how to objectively evaluate your natural strengths and experience to find a career match if you want to find a new career?
Well, that's what I do at Back to Business. So I would recommend finding someone who's a professional in the field, who is accredited to administer personality and work assessments. And so I use three. I use one world-class personality assessment, one assessment that maps your likes and dislikes to specific careers to give ideas, and then a third that I developed that balances out the other two. So it's like reading tea leaves and figuring out for the person what's the fit for them now, answering questions like, who am I now? Because I'm not the same person I was 5 or 10 years ago. And again, calling out the natural strengths and talents. So I get to hunt out the good stuff in people, and then you know, considering all of the requirements like flexibility and income, what's going to be the best direction where she will find success. So find somebody. You can use career services, your alumni career services, or a personal coach, somebody that knows how to help you set direction for your career search.
Right, it is hard to do on your own. There are ways, you know, I'll just say that there are some, you know, there are some tools online that can kind of give you a basic idea, but I do remember I had a conversation once with Linda about trying to figure out, you know, which direction somebody wants to go in, and I think one great place to start is ask yourself, if I were to design my ideal day, how would I spend it? And I think that's a good way to get yourself started thinking about what is it that you enjoy, what are you good at. A lot of times those two things go hand in hand. So there are definitely some tools around, but I would suggest that if you're looking to go a little deeper, to reach out to someone who can help you in that regard. All right, another question. Someone's thinking ahead. Do you have advice for women who are on the younger side who are planning on staying home with young children but then re-entering the workforce? So what should they be doing now to get prepared for that? Anything they can do to put themselves in a stronger position?
There are definitely things that people can do. It's very smart to plan that way. Even if you're going to be getting out of the workforce and you're Um, you don't plan on ever getting back in. You just never know what life is going to bring you, and so it's smart to do some. I've got some really easy steps. First of all, keep a me file. It's just a file of little scratched out notes every time you volunteer, every time you do something. Just write it down. Managed 8 volunteers, raised $5,000 selling cookies, and just write down who you did it with, when you did it, how long, and what your results were, and just keep them in this file, because I can guarantee over time you're going to forget. And if you want to get back into the workforce, all you do is open up the file and put it all together, and it's right there for you. But also recommend keeping your hands in something. So whether you think you would re-enter in a different career or the same career, find some volunteer work that you can do that won't, overwhelm you, but where you can keep your skills strong and they're relevant to a field. So for instance, I had one client who wants to go into marketing, and she was a room mother. Well, that's great, but she's not planning to be an educator, so I recommended that she, when she was done with her room mother gig, to go and do some marketing for the PTO organization, and that way she was, putting together and amassing transferable skills. Just a couple.
All right. Back to earlier in the process, resumes, cover letters, the job hunt. A couple of questions about those. Someone said, are resumes and cover letters the only or the best way to job hunt? I think you effectively addressed a lot of that in this, in your earlier tips. But really, what's the best way to job hunt? I'm going to suggest that it's networking, right? It's the people.
It's definitely the networking. It's that part is so underestimated, and around 80% of the jobs are never even posted on the internet publicly. They're posted internally first before they're posted publicly, so getting in the door, and again with the resume and cover letter, those are just one small part of the whole big wheel. They are a marketing document that you use to get in the door, and hopefully you've done your LinkedIn profile and it's 100% completed, and there's your resume online for people to see. So networking it's not just with your friends and neighbors, it's with people that you don't know. And you can get right onto LinkedIn and ask people questions in private conversations as well.
Okay, I think that covers the questions. I don't see any more coming in. We've had quite a good round of questions and answers here, so thank you. Just wrapping it up here, I want to thank Linda for sharing her time and her knowledge with us today. If you're interested in working with Linda, her contact information is on the screen. If you miss it, please just email me here in the alumni office. And thank you for joining us today. A recording of this presentation will be available on the Holy Cross Alumni Career Development website next week, and I will be sure to send all of you an email when it's posted. You'll also receive a short email survey about this webinar, and I encourage you to share your feedback with us. If you have any follow-up questions at all, please feel free to reach out to me again in the alumni office. Our next webinar will take place on June 15th, when Holy Cross alumna Katie Donovan, class of '85, will present on how to negotiate for better pay and benefits. Registration will open on June 1st, so keep an eye on your email and the alumni website. Again, thanks for joining us, and have a great afternoon.